Have you ever wondered if you could ride out the zombie apocalypse in Antarctica? Just you, the penguins, and that refreshing -30 breeze? It sounds like paradise. Endless ice, no neighbors, and a beautiful lack of HOA meetings. But here's the punchline. You didn't find a pristine refuge. You found a floating coffin with Wi-Fi problems. There's no rescue coming, no supply drops, and your closest emergency services are 1,000 miles of weather and bad decisions away and probably undead themselves. Picture the sky turning gray-white while the wind screams at 100 miles an hour, visibility collapses to a wall of snow, the generator coughs like it has tuberculosis, and somewhere in the distance a door slams, followed by a shuffle from something that really shouldn't be moving at this temperature. Antarctica isn't your savior, it's your final exam, and the grading curve is brutal. Before we dive into the messy details, let's set the ground rules so we're not arguing about the physics of zombie icicles later. We're dealing with cold-compliant walkers, classic undead, low metabolism, no need to breathe, brainstem-driven. The cold slows them down, stiffens their joints, even freezes them solid during deep cold snaps, but it doesn't kill them. They can thaw out and lurch back to life when summer hits, like the world's worst seasonal workers. You're already at a mid-sized coastal research station when the outbreak hits in late autumn. The last supply ship is gone. The satellite phone works when the Aurora isn't throwing a tantrum. There's diesel in bladders, a few months of food, snowmobiles, a tracked vehicle that always needs one more part, and exactly one thing that looks like a weapon, a flare gun. Your group is down to 6 to 8 survivors from an original winter-over crew of around 12. No plot armor. Frostbite is faster than heroics, and while every station is a little different, layout, equipment, caches, weather microclimates, take this as a serious framework with a sardonic grin. But first, hit subscribe and help me grow this channel. The more of you that join, the more insane survival scenarios I can dive into. Want to see surviving zombies in a Walmart? Or apocalypse on a cruise ship? Your subscription makes it happen. Here's the thing about Antarctica. It seduces survivalists the way deserts seduce mirages. You see empty and think safe. But emptiness isn't safety, it's silence. Silence just means you can hear every mistake you make. When the outbreak starts, you're in that dangerous shoulder season. Too late for ships, too early for easy rescue. Global comms go dark in a slow-motion kind of way. The messages getting shorter, stranger, and then nothing. The station leader makes 3 decisions that keep everyone breathing for a week, and one that almost ends it on day 8. The station itself is modular, raised on stilts, with insulated modules and sometimes buried corridors or open catwalks connecting buildings like a giant erector set. Outside, temperatures bounce between -15 and -45 Celsius with wind, while inside it's a cozy +18 when the generator gods are kind, and no one starts a small indoor fire with the aforementioned flare gun. Then a cruise ship on the peninsula, the last chance to see the ice before the world ends tour, goes aground. Some survivors reach shore, some don't. The ones who do bring the plague like a grim Santa. You can be humane and bring them in, or realistic and lockdown. Either choice comes with a cost you'll pay with interest. The undead down here are sluggish but relentless. In deep winter, they freeze into macabre lawn ornaments. In summer, they wake up drippy and motivated. You'll want to think you can just wait them out. That plan has merit, sure, if you weren't also waiting out your fuel, your food, your sanity, and your remaining toes. Whether you're coastal or inland matters. Inland means colder temperatures that immobilize zombies longer, but also an isolation so total that even the idea of leaving is a joke. How much fuel you got before the last ship left will set your calendar. Whether you're in 24-hour daylight or 24-hour darkness will shape not just your schedule, but your mood and your mistakes. And if your station has field caches, extra vehicles, a wind turbine, or a hydroponic closet, those little details can swing months off your life expectancy. Population density is basically 0. Let's break down what gives you a fighting chance. First, population density is basically 0. Fewer people means fewer zombies. You're not getting swarmed by a stadium dumping its contents into your parking lot. On a day-to-day basis, that means you can control perimeter breaches and deal with undead in small numbers. One person on watch can actually make a difference, and you won't wake up to a screaming wall of undead fists at your door. It's like the survival equivalent of living in a rural cabin, if the cabin also tried to murder you with wind and black ice. But low density isn't a force field. The few zombies that exist are hard to spot in whiteouts, and can wander endlessly without tiring. You don't get overrun, you get surprised. A shipwreck or a single infected group from another station flips your quiet advantage into a tiny, cramped indoor outbreak, and now you're improvising quarantine protocols in a hallway designed for parkas, not pandemics. Cold slows decomposition and movement. Second, the cold slows decomposition and movement. On paper, it's perfect. Low temperatures preserve everything, including your nerves, while making zombies sluggish, stiff, and quiet. During cold snaps, you can do exterior work that would be suicidal anywhere else. Repair fences, reroute fuel lines, drag iced-up undead into pits with a long hook, and feel weirdly competent doing it. There's even an unexpected perk: fewer smells. The stench of rot is muted, and there are no flies laying eggs in every catastrophe. You can sleep without gagging. But slow isn't stopped. A slow fall into a crevasse still kills you quickly. Your own dexterity drops, fingers go dumb, and bulky gloves turn every task into a dexterity check you will eventually fail. And when summer thaw arrives, all those frozen solutions slop back into your lap. Clear sight lines on good days. Third, when it's not trying to scour your face off, Antarctica gives you magnificent sightlines. On clear days, you can see for miles. Anything moving against the bright ice stands out like a stain on a lab coat. One person on the roof with binoculars can monitor the entire compound, call out movement, and direct a response team without sprinting around blind. It feels empowering. Then the weather flips the table. Whiteouts cut visibility to the end of your nose, while katabatic winds force you to crawl hand over hand between buildings using ropes you suddenly wish you'd checked last week. If you train yourselves to rely on "we'll see them coming," the weather is happy to teach you humility. Isolation buys time. Fourth, isolation shields you from the initial global spread. You dodge the first wave by default. By the time it hits, you've already locked down, rationed food, and established protocols without mobs of panicked strangers outside your gate. You get a head start on fortifying and organizing your crew, figuring out who fixes, who cooks, who plans, and who needs to panic quietly in the bathroom where it won't infect group morale. That head start is a genuine advantage. But once isolation calcifies into total cutoff, every medical emergency turns into a roll of the dice. You're the hospital now, the dentist, the psychiatrist, and the morgue. Your best plan is to avoid accidents, and Antarctica hates that plan. Infrastructure built for brutality. Fifth, the infrastructure was designed for brutal environments. These stations are built tough, raised and insulated, with modular designs, service corridors, and redundancy baked in. You can compartmentalize easily, seal doors, maintain heat in core areas, and retreat room by room if you have to. A lot of safety gear is already built in: fire suppression systems, carbon monoxide detectors, and dedicated mechanical workshops with spare parts. Your maintenance lead becomes the MVP, the wizard who keeps the spinning plates spinning. But that infrastructure was optimized for cyclical maintenance with resupply, not for indefinite survival during an undead winter. Filters clog, belts break, seals dry out, fuel lines can gel in the cold, and while you have redundancy, you don't have infinite replacements. One catastrophic generator failure turns your building into a freezer full of slightly used humans. Defined supplies and fuel stores. Sixth, stations tend to have defined supply caches and fuel stores, big fuel bladders, emergency rations, medical kits, even field depots tucked away for expeditions. You're not foraging in strip malls. You actually have an inventory list that tells you how many coffee filters you have left. And yes, that number turns out to matter for morale way more than you'd expect. This is a place where you can run a strict ration schedule, rotate vehicles intelligently, and plan for power down periods without immediately spiraling into chaos. The catch is simple and cruel. Fuel is finite, and power is life. Every watt you spend on lights or a toaster is a watt you're not spending on heat or water. Melting snow for water consumes obscene amounts of energy, and a contaminated fuel bladder or unnoticed leak can scuttle your life expectancy in a single groan-filled night. Terrain as a weapon. Seventh, the terrain itself can be a weapon. Sea ice, crevasses, open water, and steep embankments are fantastic zombie traps. You can guide undead toward weak ice using noise and heat as lures, then let gravity and thermodynamics finish the job while you watch from a safe distance with a hot drink that tastes like melted sadness. Zombies don't avoid hazards they don't understand. They'll walk right off edges or into slush pits if you coax them. The sting in that tale is obvious. You're not immune to those hazards either. Missteps happen. Low visibility plays tricks, and one slip in the wrong direction puts you into the Ice Goblin Club, where membership is neither exclusive nor survivable. Also, warm spells fracture your carefully cultivated barriers. Now you have wet, angry zombies drifting back to shore like the world's worst charcuterie board. Daylight and darkness can be weaponized. Eighth, the extremes of light and dark can be weaponized. In endless summer daylight, you can operate safely outside for long stretches, monitoring and working without fumbling in the dark. In endless winter darkness, you can run dark station protocols that hide your heat signatures and reduce the chance of drawing in unwanted attention. You can plan around seasons, pushing exterior projects to summer and locking in during winter. Of course, both extremes also play dodgeball with your circadian rhythm. Morale takes hits in both directions, sleep gets weird, days blur together, and people become irritable at the exact moments you need them calm and precise. The season shifts faster than your plans do, and suddenly the "we'll move in summer" strategy meets blowing fog, melting ice, and reanimated problems that slough back into your perimeter. The cold is the apex predator. Now let's get real about what can actually kill you. First and foremost, the cold is the apex predator. It outclasses zombies without breaking a sweat it doesn't have. Just bundle up. Works until your mask freezes from your breath, your goggles fog and then frost, and your fingers stop obeying commands. Fine motor skills vanish fast at -30 with wind, and suddenly changing a fuel filter feels like defusing a bomb with oven mitts. Frostnip becomes frostbite, frostbite becomes amputation, amputation becomes infection, and infection becomes death. The time between "this is fine" and "I can't feel my hands" is measured in minutes. Every outdoor task becomes a boss fight, and the fear of that fight makes you delay repairs that needed doing yesterday. All it takes is one chase across 40 meters of packed snow after a zombie that found a latch, a slip that tears a glove, and then a week of watching your thumb turn a color Crayola doesn't make. Fuel is your bloodstream, and you're anemic. Fuel is your bloodstream, and you are anemic. Everyone's first thought is, "we'll burn wood," which is adorable and unhelpful because there aren't trees. Solar is great in summer and mostly a mood board in winter. Wind turbines help if you have them and know how to keep them de-iced and running, but that's not magic either. The consequence of trying to stretch diesel is that you run generators fewer hours, spaces get colder, moisture builds up inside walls, plastics become brittle, pipes flirt with freezing, and radios go unreliable when you need them most. Every time a generator hiccups, people stop breathing. You dream in fuel gauges. A microscopic crack in a line can drain a bladder under the snow, and the first sign is a sour smell you notice 2 days too late. Water costs energy you can't spare. Even water makes you pay through the nose. Will melt snow is technically true and practically expensive. Snow is mostly air, and you need mountains of it just to stay hydrated, to say nothing of cooking and sanitation. The more you ration water, the less people wash their hands, the less the kitchen gets cleaned, and the faster infections spread. Morale also nosedives because being constantly thirsty in the cold is a special kind of misery. The sound of boiling water becomes a luxury you feel guilty for enjoying. One minor gastrointestinal bug from a half-rinsed cutting board can put the whole crew down for days. In the apocalypse, diarrhea is still a team killer. Medical is make do, and evac is a fantasy. Medical care is held together by tape, hope, and whatever's in the orange cases. Saying, "we'll be careful," is a charming lie Antarctica loves to punish. Your med kit is meant for sprains, cuts, and the occasional fracture, not for managing zombie bites, frostbitten toes, or gnarly dental issues that choose the worst possible week to explode. Minor injuries compound because antibiotics are finite and rationed. A simple laceration becomes cellulitis, a toothache becomes a systemic infection, and a concussion becomes a leadership crisis when the patient gets combative and you're suddenly asking whether that behavior is infection or brain injury. Without evac, every decision carries weight you can feel in your teeth. Weather is the unscheduled boss fight. Weather is the unscheduled boss fight you can't skip. Planning to wait for clear days sounds prudent until you go 2 weeks without one, and the repair that couldn't wait has turned from an annoying chore into an existential threat. Whiteouts delay maintenance. Delayed maintenance compounds into bigger failures, and those bigger failures require longer, riskier repairs in even worse conditions. Cabin fever, plus weather anxiety shortens tempers, and arguments break out over stupid things that matter because everything matters. One bad windstorm shears a ventilation stack. Carbon monoxide levels creep up overnight, and the headache you wake with is your last polite warning before the nap you don't wake up from. Limited weapons and ugly engagements. Weapons are limited, and noise discipline matters more than bravado. Most stations don't have firearms lying around. Your flare gun is not a reliable headshot device. It's a handheld start-a-small-fire near diesel fumes machine. Tools become weapons. Ice axes, shovels, crowbars. But close-quarters combat in narrow corridors means slips, bites, and punctures through cold weather gear you cannot easily replace. The intimacy of those engagements is psychologically corrosive. You start planning to avoid contact entirely, which is smart until you can't. One perfect indoor flare shot, can cost you an entire module and half your insulation, and now you're cold and exposed with neighbors you didn't want. Seasonal freeze-thaw zombie chaos. Seasonal zombie dynamics are as delightful as a wet sock. Yes, they freeze. Then summer happens. They thaw like cursed popsicles and ooze back into your life with all the enthusiasm of last year's problems. Bodies you stored in pits, under snow, or out on sea ice migrate with wind and melt, drifting into places you didn't expect. The dead don't stay gone, and that does things to your head you don't have a therapist to fix. Picture the first warm week exposing a drift packed with a dozen half-frozen undead wedged against your fuel berm. They were not there yesterday, and now they are very much here. Human nature becomes the real monster. Humans, predictably, are their own worst enemy. We'll stick together sounds heroic. For how long? Sleep deprivation, isolation, the same 6 faces, never-ending maintenance, and constant low-level fear are a cocktail that sours quickly. Petty grievances grow. Leadership struggles turn into sabotage by neglect. Someone hoards chocolate, someone else hoards batteries, someone stops showing up for their shift. Paranoia creeps in, then blame, then hopelessness. A locked door argument stretches a bit too long, cost you the hour you needed to fix something before the wind came up, and one avoidable failure cascades into a long, cold consequence you can't just apologize your way out of. Wildlife and ocean are not your pantry. The wildlife and the environment are not your food bank. The ocean is murder water that wants to collect your body, and while the Antarctic Treaty is not exactly policing your behavior anymore, logistics are. You don't have rifles or boats designed for these conditions, and even if you did, safe access to protein across shifting sea ice is a gamble with terrible odds. Penguins are fast, seals are mean, and the sea will remind you that falling in is a terminal mistake. A desperate food mission becomes a rescue mission, becomes a memorial service without a body. The ocean taunts you with abundance you're not equipped to harvest. Try to scavenge a beached carcass and discover 3 zombies jammed in kelp that wake with the sun's warmth. Congratulations, penguin screams are now nightmare fuel. Rescue is a myth. Rescue is a myth. The idea that a plane will come is a comforting story you tell yourselves between generator checks. Aviation here needs perfect weather, perfect runways, and people on the other end who are alive, well supplied, and motivated to risk everything for you. That's not a bet, that's denial. Planning for extraction that never comes means you ignore long-term upgrades you should have started in month 1. Hope fatigue sets in, and the day the radio goes truly dead is the day your group fractures along the lines that have been quietly forming. You may burn the last of your fuel prepping a runway for a plane that never appears, and then the lights go out for good. So can you make it? Short answer, yes for a while. Long answer, not in a way you'd describe as living. In the short term, for the first 3 to 6 months, your survival score sits around a 6 out of 10. If you're already in a station with intact generators, decent fuel, food reserves, and a team that respects safety protocols, you can stabilize. The cold keeps the undead manageable, you can compartmentalize the station, and your initial supplies buy you time to get your act together. What really helps are meticulous maintenance routines, ruthless rationing, weather-smart planning, and a safety culture so relentless it would make NASA nod approvingly. What hurts are injuries, fuel issues, and any unexpected influx of undead from a shipwreck or a desperate overland group who introduces infection into your carefully balanced ecosystem. For the long term, 6 months to 2 years, your survival score sinks to around a 3 out of 10. Fuel depletion is inevitable unless you have reliable wind, some solar support for the shoulder seasons, and battery storage you can count on. Food is a problem that vitamins and canned corn can only delay. Seasonal risks alternate between summer wake-ups that reanimate your undead backstock and winter darkness that eats your power. You can nudge the needle to a 4 or maybe a 5 if you happen to have a working wind turbine, an intact solar array, functional batteries, a small hydroponic setup, a generous stash of spare parts, and leadership that's part engineer, part therapist, and part benevolent tyrant. You'll also need the luck to avoid any external infection events that slam into your perimeter at exactly the wrong moment. If we distill the case for staying, the best arguments are the low zombie density, the way the cold slows them to a manageable crawl, The inherent toughness of the structures, the clear sight lines that simplify perimeter control on good days, and the fact that your supplies are organized instead of scavenged. The case against is heavier. Absolute fuel dependence that defines your lifespan, the high cost of water and heat, weather that builds lethal surprise windows, limited medical care, limited weapons, the unnerving reality of zombies freezing and thawing with the seasons, the relentless psychological erosion of isolation, and the fact that rescue is more fantasy than plan. If you start in late autumn with full tanks and no big surprises, you can probably hold through midwinter, when the dead outside freeze into lumpy yard art and your main enemies are maintenance and morale. Late winter into spring is the pivot from merely hard to actively dangerous. Systems are tired, parts are low, temperatures swing, melt begins, and old problems start migrating. Summer is your move window if you ever intend to leave. You'll have light, maybe some solar, perhaps navigable water that's both path and peril. After that, your odds taper sharply. The most practical advice is to stay put through the core winter while you conserve, harden, and maintain. Use deep freezes to cull any nearby undead when they're too stiff to fight back and too slow to lunge. Spend winter building or refurbishing renewables if you can. Win first because it pays off in both seasons, then solar mounts ready to catch those stretched summer days. Test, retest, and baby your battery storage. Set up microgreens or sprouts in a closet to keep vitamins flowing, because scurvy makes people clumsy, and clumsy people become biteable. Transition to dark station protocols to stretch fuel. Heat only the core spaces. Run strict duty cycles on any power-hungry systems, and accept that comfort died when the last ship sailed. When early summer arrives, reassess honestly. If fuel levels are below safety thresholds or reanimated undead are rolling in with the melt, plan a controlled evacuation to a more temperate, resource-rich location. Leaving is risky and dramatic. Staying forever is riskier and slower. All right, so would you hunker down on the ice until the last drum runs dry, or make a break for it at first thaw when the sun gives you light but also wakes the popsicle monsters? What are your short-term and long-term ratings? I'm planting a flag at 6 out of 10 for the short stretch and 3 out of 10 for the long haul, but I'm ready to be convinced otherwise. Tell me if your plan involves wind turbines on the roof, penguin diplomacy that definitely won't end in lawsuits, or a sneaky boat escape during a weather window. Did I underestimate summer zombie drift or overestimate maintenance miracles? If you're into these deep dive survival breakdowns with a side of gallows humor, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel keep the metaphorical lights on, unlike our poor Antarctic crew rationing the literal ones. I read every comment, even the just use flamethrowers crowd. Please see, diesel fumes, enclosed spaces, and the sudden desire to not be on fire. Stay warm, stay weird, and remember, in Antarctica, the cold never bothered the zombies anyway.